I'm delighted today for an episode of This Is Final to welcome my good friend Sam Glendenning. Hi, Sam. How are you doing?
Hello, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for, as Tommy Wiseau would say, hi, Mark.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it's good
Uh,
to see you, man. You're looking well.
that's good,
Sam,
wasn't it?
Sam, the reason that I'm wanting you on This Is Vinyl is that you have one of the finest vinyl collections that I know about.
Oh, thanks so
And
much,
now
mate.
some of it you got from me. So I'm claiming credit for some of that. But and you can see it behind you. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see some of Sam's collection behind you. But it's looking great. But the thing is, when I talk about my friend Sam, I talk about my friend Sam who has a superpower, and the superpower is autism. Is it not, Sam? So how I mean, you talk
Um,
about this a lot, don't you? So kind of how does your superpower manifest itself for you?
I think for myself, because I got diagnosed with autism when I was 5 years old, 5 years young, I should say. And whilst I feel there's been like everyone has like challenges along the way. I've had challenges along the way and stuff in life, but I feel like it doesn't stop me from going out and about and just even like expressing my love for music and that, like wherever going to like record shops and just like being very sociable with like a great sort of like-minded people that like runs like a few like record shops either in the northeast or where I grew up in like West Yorkshire. I'd be going to the likes of Revo Records and Vinyl Tap and Crash Records, Loafers Vinyl, Relics Records, for a few good examples right there. And yeah, all the people that worked there and the people that say record shops in the northeast, I've just got nothing but glowing things to say about each and every one of them guys who like owns those record shops. And also, that is a really good like sort of like it's just a great like sort of place to be in that, and also just makes you feel right at home, like talking about the music you love, but also being introduced to new music via like like a number of record shops with great like-minded people who either like are there as customers or work there. But also as well, I just think it's a great like coping strategy with being transported into like another world really with like headphones when I'm out and about. Like on a daily basis, really. If I was ever going around to the shop, or if I was like around in Newcastle and stuff. And I just think it is the best of both worlds, going out and about into a city that you love or place that you feel right at home at, but also being transfixed and transported with the
Yeah.
album, or making a new music discovery, and you're really drawn in. You kind of, it's a great escapism,
Yeah.
and and I think as well it really makes a great impression into like your day-to-day routine and what you love doing. Like if I was to say go to a record shop, if I was to go to work or go to HMV, do the stuff that I love doing, and then being transported to like like discovering an artist for the first time,
Yeah.
but also kind of like going back down memory lane and kind of like like revisiting an artist or a band's catalog.
Yeah.
And it kind of just reminds myself, wow, what a fantastic album this was. Wow, I forgot how amazing this
Yeah.
band's discography is. And it kind of just puts a smile on my face and makes all the more the day worthwhile sort of thing. So it's kind of that's kind of how I kind of sort of visualize it, sort of like in regards to like my autism and stuff. But also, I think it's really great for like social connections as well. Like, I'm part of like a few like Facebook groups that is like related to like music and stuff, and I've had a great I've made some incredible friendships because of music as well. Music has been a real plus for that. And
when was the first
one
time
of
you
my
came?
close.
When was the first time you came into our shop? When was that?
Right. This is a really good question, Mark. I first came upon the Beehive. I think it was just one day out of the blue, or I might have saw like a advertisement for like you guys, the Beehive, and this was about September 2017 time. And the first two LPs I bought, I was with my mum. And we were both in Alnwick on that day. I think the same day Everton sadly lost 3-0 to Tottenham. I remember that as well. Yeah. But basically bought my first ever two LPs. It was Eric Clapton's Crossroads, I think it was. I think it was Crossroads or Slow Hand. It was one of them. I think it was one of them two. And I also got a Bob Dylan album, and I think a very underrated Bob Dylan album, which was Slow Train Coming. And kind of when Bob Dylan was going through like his religious sort of like phase, and he's like, like back catalogue, it was kind of, was it the Judas period? I think he called it. When he had like a couple of other albums of that caliber, that ilk. And so I bought those. Those were my first two ever LPs, like at the Beehive. But then I had such a great, and you're going to love this, Mark. I came away thinking, what an incredible, like final selection that was. And I can only give props and merits to your dear self and the other guys that work there as well.
We've talked about certain different artists. Every time you come in, we have a good chat about kind of, well, what's your favorite album? What's been released this year? What do you like? What are you collecting at the moment? And I remember one of the things that we started talking a lot about, because I got a really good collection of XTC albums in, and I remember you coming in, and you I think you were just starting on the XTC journey, but you've probably got every XTC record they made now, have you?
I've got all 12 of their studio albums, mate. I think is it 12 or 14 studio albums if you class the Dukes of Stratosphere, which I most certainly do, because it's still XTC. It's only just under like kind of like a different name. It's on like the albums and stuff, but it's still very much their identity, just under a different name sort of thing. But XTC, I kind of jumped the bandwagon with XTC probably March 2018. I watched the fantastic documentary XTC This Is Pop, which is possibly, I'm going to make a bold statement here and go off the bat and say it's possibly, it has the potential to be the best music documentary I have ever seen in my life. Brilliant. And I think that kind of sort of spirals into the fact that over time XTC would become like my second favorite band of all time. I just think they're one in a million, no pun intended there, because I think XTC did a song of that, didn't they, with like millions in the title. So I threw in a bit of a pun there. And I just remembered, Mark, I listened to the likes of White Music, Skylarking. They were like the first couple of albums that I listened to, and then it led me on to like English Settlement and then Mama and all those albums, Black Sea. And I just became in absolute love with them, mate. And I found the whole history with the band just so fascinating as well, and how the likes of Andy Partridge and Colin Mauldin and Dave Gregory would become their own like machine, really. And it was just absolutely fantastic. It's just, and even Andy Partridge has got such a great like bubbly personality, like the other guys in the band as well.
When you discover a band, like we all do, I remember when back in the day, when I was discovering bands like the Stranglers and the Cure and stuff. We'll come on to the Cure later on, because I know you and I have a shared love for that new album. But when you discover a new band, or a new old band or whatever, you more than anybody else I know, I think, decide you want to delve into the catalog. And are you? Would you say that you become a completist for the bands that you like? Do you have to have everything, or are you happy just having a couple of albums that you love?
Yeah, I think that depends, and it's a very good question, by the way, Mark. I think it depends on who the band is and how much I love this band to start with, like at the start their catalog. And I think as well, it's a bit like with myself with Oasis. I like Oasis. They're just not one of my favorite bands. I've kind of only stuck with their first 2 to 3 albums. I'm always gonna applaud of what them and Blur did for the Britpop movement at the time, and that made a really great impression on people all over the world. I'm always going to applaud them for that. But I think there's other bands, like, I would say of that similar era, even I would even say like Teenage Fan Club are bands that I just thought, I think it was like during the pandemic, I listened to the likes of Grand Prix, Bandwagon S, songs from Northern Britain, and then it kind of spurred me on to like subsequent albums in their catalogue as well, like Man Made and Shadow. And I think they've got a real like versatility within like both their career and that their output as well. And also, so I would say someone like that, I would say I'm a bit of a completist with. Not so much bands like Black Sabbath. I mean, Black Sabbath, I'm kind of just happy with what I know, sort of thing, in regards to the Ozzy Osbourne.
You like to have a couple of the classics, but not necessarily everything. Yeah. Where do you stand on a greatest hits album for a band? Do you like them or not?
I think you said this at one point as well, Mark. I believe you said it with Echo and the Bunnymen. Like, I would say if you're ever going to get into Echo and the Bunnymen, the best starting point for them is their compilation, Songs to like Love and Sing, is it?
Songs to Love.
And that kind of covers their first 4 mighty albums with like a barrel of singles from each of those albums. That is kind of a great like starting point. Yeah. And then if you like what you hear from the compilation, that might sort of spirals into checking out like their catalog. So greatest hits album, I don't listen to a great deal of greatest hits albums nowadays, unless if it's a band where their albums are not all that accessible, like either on vinyl or on streaming. And then let's say the greatest hits album is the only place to go to check out that band's music on streaming or even on a physical media format, then I would kind of make an exception there. But even so, like, I think a compilation is just, it's kind of the summary of it just being a very good way of like sort of listening to someone's like singles into one like basket, really, and just like having it all there in one place, all the singles that artist or that band's put out, and you've got it kind of on a silver platter.
You and I probably had this conversation before, where if you want to get into a band, sometimes it is a good starting point, and because it's always like a very cost-effective way of doing it as well, because you can buy one album or you can stream it, and you can go, okay, well, here's a load of stuff which you either, if you love it, you're going to want to go and explore more about it and understand where the writing came from, where the inspiration came from, the creative force behind the band, if you like. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Just listen to it once in a while and move on to the next one. Do you have? I mean, you look at your collection behind you. It looks very mighty, Sam. It looks good.
As you can tell, I love music.
You do, don't you? But have you got a system in there? So do you do it alphabetically? Do you then? And are you really sort of serious about that, or do you, a bit like me? I've got some of it which is alphabetical and some of it which I haven't put away properly, but I know where it is. So how do you do yours? Is it
that is a really good question. I'm so glad you asked that, because So basically, how I've got it is, Mark, it's a very sort of like kind of a bit of a unique way of handling it, really. Even though if I was to say do this like like in sort of like a retail fashion or like in a like record shop, it maybe isn't the way I would kind of do it if it was like to be in a retail store. Yeah. But kind of like for my own collection's sake, I would say I still go A to Z or A to Y. I don't think I've got that many Zs in the collection. But I would go like the band who kind of got like the oldest released. So it could be, I don't know, sort of like say Altered Images, they're like 1980, and then it would go ABC. Their release came out in 1982. Then you've got Arctic Monkeys, who's out at like a couple of their albums from 2007 or 2009. So I kind of do it in that order, or Beach Boys, Beatles, 1960s, early 60s, and then leading on to David Bowie in the late 60s. So I kind of do it in that sort of like concise order, really. It's kind of, I've kind of stuck to that sort of like that sort of like symmetry line really since probably have done that since about 2016, 2017. Just something clicked my mind of, you know what, I'd love to do it in kind of like this A to Z sort of like order, really. And I kind of just stuck that with that ever since.
And do you put, I mean, those look all like LPs now. Have you 12-inch singles in with the LPs, or are they separate?
Yeah, I am basically I've only started collecting 12-inch singles probably since it possibly was about 2019. I was quite late to the game when it came to like collecting like 12-inch singles and stuff. I was kind of mainly just drawn in with albums. But then I felt also a lot of singles you can't actually either get on the album or the compilation. So I was thinking there's a few of XTC singles that has B-sides.
Yeah.
There's another band that might have a few B-sides, but really the only place you can get it is on the 7-inch or the 12-inch single format. So I thought there was a light bulb moment that came one day, and I thought, why not start to maybe take recognition of what this band has got to offer in regards to like their singles output, in regards to either if it's 7-inch or 12-inch format. Either way, it's great to know that you've got that as like a side collection, if that kind of makes sense. There
makes perfect sense. A lot of it is some of these.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Some of these artists actually, used singles very cleverly. So you mentioned David Bowie before, and so one of the first singles I ever bought was Space Oddity, and it wasn't the original. Cool. I'm not that old, right? But I'm quite old. But,
you only look 40, Mark.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, you're very kind. But I think I bought it in maybe 1973, 74. It's one of the re-releases. But on the B-side, it had Changes and Velvet Goldmine, both brilliant, brilliant songs.
Okay, so
yeah. You buy the single, and then there was 2 tracks on the B-side, which hooked me into David Bowie, because suddenly I've got 3 amazing songs. And then I want to go and buy the album. So it's a bit like this carrot which is dangled in front of you as a record collector or a fan, to say, you've put your toe in the water, now dive in, because there's some great. So it's why I'm interested on the single side. Another thing about collections and collectors, we're all a bit. I think maybe what you were talking about with Autism before and record shops, we're all a bit like that, because we're all a bit kind of obsessed with collecting records and being in that environment with like-minded people. But a lot of collectors really want the first pressings of an album. Are you like, do you look for the first pressings, or are you happy just to get a good copy and you're not really worried about what pressing it is?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Mark. Now, sometimes I kind of went into the mindset of just settling with what I saw like in the record shop one day, or like say if it was like a record fair. I kind of made that mistake in the past of where like I bought an album, but it was like either on a bootleg, it was kind of on a reissue that didn't have the best sound quality. So that was kind of before I kind of took on that insight to delving into what is the go-to pressing, or what or if it's still the reissue but yet on that same label. So I think it kind of depends. I would say a good example is if an original pressing is only like say 10, 20 quid more than the reissue, I kind of would draw into that, because you're still getting your money's worth with paying the 20 quid extra or whatever works like within like your price range. It kind of then you kind of committed to how much you love that album and you want it with the best sound quality possible. I would say an extra 20, or even for myself 30 quid for which is probably what I'd go as far to go with in regards to getting that original pressing of an album that has been recently reissued, because it's how it came out. You might get the original like inner sleeve as well, and all that bells and whistles, and like you've got it, how you're gonna get that album, how it originally came out and how it originally sound, and how the album as well. And but also the other, I would say it also depends. If say like a good example recently, Mark, we've never really touched upon this like discography of this band, but there's a band called The Sounds who are on the Corova Records label. Yeah, same as Echo and the Bunnymen. I don't know if this band supported the Bunnymen at the time in like the early 80s or whenever it was. But also like, so The Sounds, Jeopardy, the album, I think that goes like for 60, 70 quid. The reissue, I think, goes for a rough minimum of 25 to 30 quid. So if I was to find an original copy for, say, I didn't know, probably an extra 20, 25 quid, I would probably sort of jump that bandwagon and go for that. But if it was something like one of their other albums, like From the Lion's Mouth, which I think it goes for astronomical prices nowadays, the original presses, I think.
Has that got Live Like Skeletons on it?
That track? I think so, mate. I've only listened to the album the once, but I think it goes for, I could be wrong here, Mark. There might have been extra listings I'm not aware of, but the last time I checked, it was going into like, we're talking triple digits for the like original press, which kind of is a little bit, sorry, mate.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all, because I think some of those albums, they weren't made in great quantities. They they were a bit of a cult band, The Sounds. So they're around. I mean, I remember them being around, but they didn't necessarily trouble the charts a great deal. So therefore, the demand for those albums wasn't the same as Echo and the Bunnymen, who when you're getting an act that's I don't know, Killing Moons all over the Top of the Pops or something like that, that's going to sell, and demand will be there for a lot of albums. But I like finding those little niche records as well. I'm with you on that. I think also when a band records an album, makes an album, they get a test pressing of this album. So that's sent back to the band's manager, and it's sent back to the band to say, we need you to approve this and make sure the quality is right. So that with a first pressing of an album, the band have heard it, and the manager's heard it, and the A&R person has heard it, and they've signed off on it and gone, yeah, that's the quality we were looking for. That's great. Go ahead, manufacture it. With some of the repressings, they don't get involved in that, so they can be pressed on very thin vinyl, or just not as well looked after, I guess. So yeah, I'm a little bit with you like that. I've got a copy of first pressing of Free, Fire and Water by Free. And I also had a copy of the same album on a much later pressing. Well, actually, maybe not that much later pressing, but the two were like two different albums. So you play the later pressing, sounded okay. It's not bad. I could live with it until I put the first pressing on, because one came into the Beehive and I thought I'm having that, so I'm going to keep it. And I put the first press on and was like, oh my God, the difference is it's incredible. You know, it's just this album suddenly has come to life. It's deep. I can hear the bass sound going on. I can hear everything going on. I couldn't really hear before, but I didn't know I couldn't hear it until I heard the first version, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a bit, so I mean, you obviously, I mean, you delve deeply into a lot of the artists you like. What are some of your favorite newer artists? Maybe you could give us some Sammy G tips about what artists do you think we should be collecting right now? Because there'll be a load of people listening to this that they're interested in collecting records. And if you want to build a collection for the future, we've talked a lot about the albums and bands that have been and gone, and maybe their career is sadly over now. But some new stuff, there's some exciting new stuff coming out. So what would you recommend that we collect now?
It's a really good question, Mark. I kind of always go by so you could probably say, just thinking, if you had a favorite genre, and if there's any like newer output with like within that genre. So for myself, I'm really into like a lot of indie pop, or like indie bands and that, or like if I like jangle pop and stuff. And like when bands still have that similar output, or a similar sound, a similar vein to bands that we love and we know from like the 80s and stuff, it works like a charm. It's kind of, it's a bit of a blessing, really, to know when a band comes onto the scene for the first time, like modern day, and then they've kind of took a big leaf out of the book of like the 80s and stuff, and they've kind of replicated that similar sound and, kind of done that sound or production pretty much justice. So I would say for this, so I'm into a lot of 80s synth pop. I would say there's a band called Molchat Doma. They're a Russian synth pop band, and they sound pretty similar to like early Depeche Mode, or Depeche Mode from the Violator era, which is an absolutely amazing album. It's an absolutely incredible record, that. And also I would say like bands, if you like, sort of like maybe like I would say the Velvet Underground, or like the bit of the Wedding Present. There's a fairly new band called the Reds, Pinks and Purples, and they've been going since 2019 now, I think, and it's incredible. Like, they've had about 7 or 8 albums out within like, I know, 5 years. And
yeah. I was going to say I don't know them. I haven't heard of them, so I'm gonna follow your tip. I'm gonna have a listen.
Yeah, and it's so chilled out. It's relaxed. It's kind of each album, is got a little bit of a similar. It's very similar in style, but I think it's just the guitars, I think the riffs and stuff, and kind of the lead singer, and he's got a very sort of unique, sort of distinctive sort of voice that is all the more engaging. And I think last year they released like 2 albums, Mark, and both of them albums I think creeped into my top 5 favorite albums of the year. And I think they're really good. So like, kind of like, if you think of like the early National mixed with a bit of the Velvets, maybe a bit of like the Wedding Present, and you put all of those similar sounds and stuff mishmash into like one basket, you're not far off, really. It's kind of got that sort of like it kind of represents that sort of like jangle pop and stuff very well to a T, really.
Do you get sucked into different colors? I noticed that, for example, like Sam Fender, when he put 17 Going Under out, there were about 4 or 5 different sleeves. So the collector and the OCD part of me was going like, oh God, I should buy all of these, because I like the album. I should buy. And then I was thinking, hang on, I'm getting sucked in by marketing here. So, I'm just going to buy an album. But with an album like we spoke about just before we started recording, we were talking about The Cure. And The Cure's new album, which we'll talk about in a second, which we both love.
Yeah.
As a collector, I ordered it about 4 weeks in advance. I thought I want it on the day of release, and I don't want to listen to anything. I don't want to hear it on the radio. I don't want to stream it. I don't want anything to interfere with that first vinyl play that I'm going to have with this album. But I noticed there was a couple of different versions, and I thought, well, this one's got a kind of clouded grey vinyl, and it says limited edition, and it's about 5 or 10 quid more. But I'm having that one because I'm a collector, so I want that because that's going to be limited as a release. So do you look at albums when they're releasing and go, I want the limited version, or do you just sometimes just go, I'm happy with any version?
I would say about this one, Mark, and it's a very good question. I think if you know you love this album, to a wide degree, and you know it's an album that you're going to constantly go back and revisit it. Yeah. I would say, if you want to get like these like different pressings that you just know one day they'll go out of press, and they won't be manufactured like forever and stuff. And one day one of these pressings is going to go possibly double and then even into triple digits down the line on secondhand market. You've got to think we've got to think about that and put that into consideration. So I would say if myself or someone else wants something and they think looks like a really good release, it's limited, and how long is this going to be around for? I would say just go with your heart's content and just go for it. It could just go for silly money down the line, and then at least you've got that. It's like a real that you made the right decision there of getting that when you couldn't stuff. Because I can't tell you, Mark, how many times I said to myself, "Oh, do you know what? I'm thinking about getting this. Oh, should I get this?" And then one day it's just gone. It's like a blink and you miss it sort of moment.
That's why I did that with the Cure album, because I was thinking if I don't order it now, I'm not going to get one, and I want one. Have you ever bought an album like that and thought, well, I'm going to buy a copy that I want to play, and I'm going to buy a copy that I'm going to keep as a collector's item? Have you ever done that?
To be honest with you, Mark, it's been very rare that I bought a sort of a duplicate of something. I think if I was to make an exception with a duplicate of something, it's got to be an album that I absolutely love. And say, if I wanted to, I don't know, if I wanted to get like a different coloured pressing of like an album, and it might obviously it might have maybe a different like booklet or lyric sheet in there, tucked away, then I think it's worth it for that. I think that's another thing to say. So if we kept like an original press, we've got the album as it originally came out, and we know that how it originally came out back to front and stuff. But I think if there's an album we still absolutely love and it's been reissued, but it's done in such a sort of like a unique way, and they kind of that sort of like company or that that pressing plan has put their heart's desire into how much they love this album, and they it might have been like self-produced as well. And I think as well, like if it goes with like a different sort, if it's like different coloured pressing, and you might get like some bonus tracks as well that has never made the cuts on like its original pressing. So you might even get a bonus disc with this, reissue of like this album where it was originally a single disc. Yeah. And I think it's all worth it for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Beatles fan, and I got a couple of years ago the Let It Be box set, which had all these wonderful different versions on various different tracks and stuff like that, which I loved, kind of delving into it. And I think I've got a box set of Abbey Road as well, similar kind of thing, and that I quite like. you know, when you, like you say, when you're buying an album you love and you want to explore it even more, and you can get a kind of a reissue which allows you to kind of delve into some of this, and like lots of different photographs and sleeve notes. Let It Be one. Did you watch the Let It Be film? It's like all 9 hours of it.
I didn't, Mark. I heard it was amazing because you had the Let It Be, and then I think you've had was it the Get Back like documentary or series? Because I never got round to checking that one out on Disney Plus. I think
Yeah,
it was.
Get
Excuse
Back.
me.
But that's basically that you know, culminating that. But that was, you know, spawned the album, the box set, and having watched the 9 hours of TV footage, I was kind of fascinated by this, kind of thinking, okay, some stuff here I really need to explore a bit more. But yeah, again, with buying albums, I've bought a number of albums. Well, there's two things that happen. There's some albums I have a complete blind spot, and I'll walk into a shop like mine, like the Beehive, but you know, when I go shopping somewhere else, I go, oh, brilliant! There's a copy of Space Odyssey by David Bowie, or Ziggy Stardust by David Bowie, and Ziggy Stardust is the one that I had a blind spot for ages. So I've got about 5 copies of that because I kept thinking, oh, great, I need that, and then getting it home and realizing I'd already got 3. And the other one that I do is if I find a really beautiful condition copy of an album that I love, I'll quite often buy that as well as the one that I've had all my life and I love to bits, but it's getting a bit scratchy now because I've played it a bit too much and I've dropped it once or twice after I've had a drink and stuff. So sometimes I just want to get another original copy. So I've got a couple with the Stranglers, for example. There's some copies of that you used to go to parties and take albums to parties, and then you get the album back, but you go, oh God, was someone trodden on this or put a cigarette out on it or something? And so still plays, but it's a bit iffy. So now I will do that. But so yeah, I think as collectors, we all fall into that category of you know, having our own thing. I'm fascinated by what you were talking about before, about the way that you've catalogued your albums. I might have to steal that because my cataloging system is not the best. So anyway, we talked a bit about The Cure, and when before we started recording,
excuse me,
that's all right, don't worry. So before we started recording, we talked a bit about this album. So as a collector and as a fan, how excited were you when you realized there was another Cure album coming out, and how much do you love it? Because you were talking about it before, just going like, you know, tell me again about the Cure.
Yeah, when The Cure, because this was long rumored, this was long in the works of The Cure finally releasing that comeback album. I'm sure this has been rumored for like 7-8 years. When is this going to happen and stuff? Yeah. And then, yeah, they finally made that announcement. I think it was back in September time. I didn't even listen to that brand new single to promote it. I thought, do you know what? I am going to go into, like you did, Mark, I'm going to go into this completely blind as I can.
Yeah.
And I think fast forward a month or so, this was like the first weekend of November. I was thinking, oh, I've got to go to work today. And, you know, I'm going to go to work. And I put my headphones on. And then, yeah, the first track kicked in, which I think was Alone, I think. Mm. And then it was like this band just never went away. I was like, wow, they have still got it. This is how a band does a comeback album. And I just was thinking this, and then the next track came in, I'm thinking, this is something like from Disintegration. The next track came in and I was like, wow, this is so blissful. This is just so immersive and transportative. And then, yeah, Mark, leading up to End Song, the final track, I was thinking it absolutely, just like most of the album did, it took my breath away. I was thinking, this just reminded me of how much I love The Cure, how they're one of my favourite bands. And I, of course, want another brand new Cure album like anyone else would who loves The Cure. Of course I would.
Mm-hmm.
But if that was to be their final album, and if that was the closing song to that album, Songs of a Lost World, and if it was their, you know, kind of their closure track to their like catalogue, I would say in a nutshell, that was the perfect way to sign off. What an incredible vast catalogue this band have delivered front and centre. For all those years. I would say, Mark, it was just the definition of the wait was well worth it. You know, it definitely was. And I just hope if they are going to bring out a new album, we won't have to wait another 16 years. And that goes for Wallace and Gromit as well.
Well, brilliant. But you know what, Sam? I'm gonna close it on this, and the wait has been well worth it to have a chat with you, my friend, about all of the vinyl stuff, because I think it's been brilliant, really insightful, really enjoyed it. So a big thank you to Sammy G, Sam Glendenningwho. Do you want to give a little shout out to your YouTube channel? You got your YouTube channel, haven't you? So what's
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. Yeah, and thanks for having me on, by the way. So, yeah, my YouTube channel, Sammy G's World of Cinema, it's mainly like film focused. So I've done like a couple of like ranking videos.
Film soundtracks as well. You've done one of those. I watched that one, which is great.
Oh, thanks, mate. And yeah, kind of the best of both worlds right there of vinyl, music and film.
Well, listen, Sam, thank you ever so much. Been a real pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much, buddy.
So, so I hope everybody listening to this has enjoyed it. But thank you very much, Sam. Brilliant.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark.
This podcast was presented by Mark Hobro, produced by Swansfield Music. It was edited by James Gray for Kinetic Studios. Title music is Stoner Punk, published by Boost Music and Lift Music. Copyright 2024.